Mark chapter 9, verse 48. Where their worm dieth not. What you need to know. How can worms survive in eternal fire? How can we understand Mark chapter 9, verse 48? Mark 9:48 is taken from Isaiah 66:24. In that chapter, the future salvation of Jerusalem, as well as the judgment on unbelievers, are depicted. Interestingly enough, verse 24 talks about corpses or dead bodies, which are affected by the worm and the fire. These are not living beings anymore. The word worm is found in the singular and not in the plural. The fire is unquenchable in the sense that nobody can quench it until it has done its work. In Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 27, the destruction of Jerusalem is announced, which took place when the Babylonians conquered the city. The fire could not be quenched, but today it does not burn any longer. It burned until it had consumed what can be consumed. After that, it was extinguished. Thus, neither the fire nor the worm are eternal. The text does not talk about a soul either, separate from the body. If such a soul would exist, it would not be affected by worm or fire anyway. On the other hand, the worm cannot be equated with the disembodied soul of humans. The worm is their worm, namely those who stood in opposition to God and have now passed away. It is, so to speak, not an individual worm. The worm is furthermore so closely related to fire that it must be regarded as a means of destruction similar to the fire. Nowhere in the Bible is a worm identified with the soul. Living human beings can be compared to worms. Psalm 22 verse 6 and Job 25 verse 6. However, when they die, they become food for the worms, as Isaiah stresses in Isaiah chapter 14 verse 11. In other words, within the book of Isaiah, worm is a term that relates to judgment. It is not a human part that lives on. Mark chapter 9 verse 48 takes this figure of speech from Isaiah, which points to the unavoidable destruction, and applies it to those who do not live according to the will of God. That it is indeed a figure of speech, is obvious, since the worm exists in conjunction with fire, which is not possible in our natural world. Jesus connects the worm and the fire to the hell, Gehenna. Gehenna is derived from the Hebrew word Hinnom, designating the valley south of Jerusalem. See Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 32 through 34, in which, according to tradition, trash and even corpses were burned. The lake of fire in Revelation 20 seems to point to the same reality. The unbelievers are devoured by fire. The lake of fire is the second death. Revelation chapter 20, verses 9, 10, and 15. By using this imagery, Jesus warns against the consequences of not following him and against the final judgment, which will end with the complete annihilation of all evil and all evil ones. The Bible teaches that humans are mortal. According to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 14 through 16, God alone is immortal. He bestows immortality as a gift on those who experience the first resurrection. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 51 through 54. Eternal life is always dependent on Christ and not attainable in separation from him. Romans chapter 6 verse 23, John chapter 3 verse 36, chapter 5 verse 24, 1 John chapter 5 verses 11 and 12. Not even in hell. The term soul normally stands for human beings. The Bible clearly teaches that the soul can and will die. See Ezekiel chapter 18 verse 4, James chapter 5 verse 20, Revelation chapter 20 verse 4, Psalm 89 verse 48, Job chapter 36 verse 14, Leviticus chapter 19 verse 8. These texts contain the term soul. The end. And God bless you.